Bruce Johnson, founder and CEO of BizScalers and the BizScalers Club. And today I want to talk to you about a simple game that you can play to be able to radically grow your business this year. Now, year after year, I'll typically survey business owners and entrepreneurs, and I'll ask them a series of questions. One of them is usually about this. What is the number one, or what are a couple of the primary wants or desires that you have for your business? And I'll give them a list of maybe 8 or 10 items plus the other column. And every year, the number one response is, I want to grow my business faster. I want to grow my business faster. That is the common thread year after year from the vast majority of business owners and entrepreneurs. And why is that? Because in general, most of them aren't growing very fast. They want to grow fast, but they're not. And typically, it's usually some kind of plateau, so they're growing at plus or minus 5%. So they're doing $1 million this year, they're doing maybe $1,050,000 or $950,000 the next year, or they're doing 2 million, they're doing 2.1, or they're back to 1.9. And so they go up and down in this really narrow region. So when somebody wants to grow like this and they're actually growing like this, you ought to ask the question, why? Why is that? And why is it such a common problem for so many business owners and entrepreneurs? And there are a lot of reasons, but if you were to extract back to the core reason why, I think the core reason why is because they're stuck in incremental thinking. What they tend to think is, hey, you know what, we did 2 million this year, what if we were to do 2.1 or 2.2? Wouldn't that be a good year? And whenever you're thinking incrementally, you're trying to figure out how do we take what we're currently doing and do it just a little bit better than we did it last year? Or how can we add just another customer or a couple customers or a couple clients or a couple contracts, or if we want another RFP, would that get us to that next level? The problem, of course, is when you're thinking similarly to the way that you arrived where you are, you're always in trouble, because the thinking that got you to one location usually won't get you to the next. It'll keep you stuck is what it'll do. And in fact, that's one of the reasons in the BizScalers Club that we go through all kinds of training about how you can learn how to change your thinking, because you have to change your thinking to be able to get a different result. Remember, Einstein put it this way, he says, we can't think that the thinking that got us into this problem is the same kind of thinking that will get us out of that, or something along those lines. You have to change the thinking. That's the key question. You have to get out of incremental thought. So if you want to find out more about this, go to scalingclub.com, scalingclub.com. So one of the games that I've been encouraging people to play for a long time is the game we call the Double It game. It's a pretty simple game. You just take whatever the metric is and you just say, what if we were to double it? And you can do this with all kinds of metrics and all kinds of different time frames. So for example, you could play the Double It game on revenue. What if we were to go from 2 million to 4 million? If we go from $500,000 to $1 million? If we were going to go from 5 million to 10 million, right? You could play it over your profit rate. Right now we're doing 10%. What if we were to do 20%? You could play it over your leads. We're getting 100 leads a month. What if we were to get 200 leads? You could play it over retention rates. You could play this game over your staff. We've got 20 employees. What if we had 40 employees? You could do it with your own productivity. And the key thing here is that you're just trying to think differently. You're trying to come up with some kind of mental framework that would force you to get out of incrementalism to think completely differently. For example, let's take the most obvious one, the revenue one. If we were to go from, let's say, 2 million to 4 million, what would be different about us? How would we be acting functionally different as a company? And you probably have to go back to your business model. You'd start asking questions. Do we have to go after a new niche? Do we have to go after a group of people that will pay more per product? Do we need to change the product offerings? Do we need to go after a different need? Do we need to change locations? Do we need to go after different locations? Do we need to go from our local community to national? Do we need to change our pricing strategy? Do we need to change the way that we're marketing? Do we need to change the way that I'm functioning as the leader of the company? Are we going to need to double the number of staff or not? And so it forces you to think at a completely different level than if you're simply looking at this year and saying, okay, next year, how are we going to do better than this year? That won't get you to think radically different. That'll get you into incremental thinking. You want to think radically different. Now, there's nothing wrong, by the way, of doing what's currently in vogue today to do the 10X deal, right? So instead of having a $2 million company, what if we had a $20 million a year company? I have no problem with that. But for the vast majority of people who've been growing plus or minus 5%, to get from 5% growth to 1,000% growth is really hard to do. But if you were to go from 5 or 10% to thinking about 100% growth, that might be in the realm of possibility, and you can start to think differently, but not so radically different. So if you're to go from 2 million to 4 million, your job is going to be different, but it won't be as different as to go from 2 million to 20 million. So I would encourage you to play the double it game this year. Now you should probably be beginning right now, where I'm recording this in August. You should start thinking about your strategic plan. And so one of the things I want to encourage you to start thinking about before you actually begin the planning process is to start playing the double it game this month. Start thinking about what would it be like if we were to double our revenue this year? What would it be like if we were to double our margin? What would it be like if I were to double my staff? Now, again, you could play this over different time periods. You could say, I want to double my company in 6 months, or I could double my company in the next 3 years. You get to pick the time frame, but playing double it will get you out of incrementalism. That's the key. Do the same thing with your own productivity. So, if I were now at double my productivity, what would I not be doing that I'm currently doing? What would I be doing that I'm not currently doing? And just ask yourself that kind of question. Look at your team. If I was to double the team, what would that look like? Who would I be reporting to? Who needs to leave? And who do I need to attract? And what would I have to pay? And how would we divvy up job responsibilities? What would the org chart look like when I was at 4 million as opposed to when I'm currently at 2 million? That's what the power of the double it question. It gets you out of incrementalism and it gets you to start thinking at a different level. When you change the level of thinking, you can ultimately change the kind of company that you're going to be leading. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, yeah, but I don't know if we can grow that fast, remember that every year Inc. magazine publishes a list of the top 500, the top 5,000 companies. Now, to make the top 500, you probably have to grow by somewhere between 250 and 300 plus per year, depending on which year you're applying. So if you could do that over 3 years, yeah, that would be awesome. In fact, you'd make the list. And the good news is that there are at least 500 companies every year that make that, and then there are companies that do it that don't even apply. So it is possible to more than double in less than 6 months because there are clearly a bunch of companies that do it every single year. But if you want to make the Inc. 5000 list, depending on the year, it's somewhere between 40 and 60% over 3 years, which, is 13.3 to 19%. So if you're to grow by just 20% a year over the next 3 years, you would be an Inc. 5000 company. You'd be one of the 5,000 fastest growing companies in the U.S. And if you're around the world, wherever you're listening to, you'd be one of the fastest growing companies in your area, I'm sure as well. So practice double it thinking. If you could double your company in 3 years or less, or in 2 years, or in a year, or in 6 months, what would that look like? That's the fun of the double it game. And if you want, you can play this with your staff. It's fun to play with them as well. But I would encourage you to start thinking about it now so that when you get to your strategic planning this year, you get out of incrementalism and how we're going to grow by 5 or maybe even 10%. And you start thinking about what if we were to go by 25 or 50 or 100% or 250% over the course of the next year? What would that look like? And once you get out incremental thinking, everything begins to change. You're going to change your products, your services, your pricing. Everything's going to need to change because the same level of thinking that got you here won't get you to that next level. So start playing the double it game. I think you're going to enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, make sure you check out the BizScalers Club at scalingclub.com. Scalingclub.com. We're going to help you learn how to think differently about every area of your business. If you're watching this by video and you haven't subscribed yet, hit the subscribe button. If you're listening by podcast, hit the subscribe button there as well. Because my commitment to you each and every week is to bring you actionable ideas that will help you grow and scale a great business. So until next week, to your accelerated success, Bruce out.